Alright everyone, yesterday the Lamestream media decided to go after the WikiLeaks subject yet again, suggesting, this is from I believe the Daily Beast, it's archived link in the description of course, claiming actually that Jerome Corsi and WikiLeaks and sort of this nexus of Russia connection, basically anything that's tangential to the Mueller probe, that this is actually the spawning point for tales about Clinton's poor health. But the thing is, like, people were already saying that before Clinton even was the nominee. There were questions about her overall health anyway. Years before, she had already suffered at least one fall. Clinton had talked about, Bill Clinton, had talked about how she has gotten dehydration occasionally, had some problems. To the point where it always looked like Hillary Clinton was kind of frail. She just didn't have as much energy as some of her opponents. It was a legitimate question. Look, the same question would be in my mind to some degree for someone like Bernie Sanders or even Trump himself. If Trump had repeatedly broken down in coughing fits, it would have been front page news. People would say, well, he's not fit for the office. You'll remember that one, I think it was, the first debate after the primaries were done, I think. Although I think it also happened at like the second or third Republican debate. You'll remember he was doing sniffy thing. And people were like, oh, he's obviously on coke, or something severely wrong with him. He's got like heart failure, he's sniffing a lot or something. You'll remember, and they talked about this, unironically. They also talked about his hand size. He's a bit tubby, in all honesty. He is. He's an older, he's 70, so sue him. He eats a lot of McDonald's. Ultimately, though, for his age at least, fairly energetic. And yet all of these things were considered front page news. His sniffing, his hands, his cock, anything about that. With Clinton, though, she literally passes out during the 9/11 memorial stuff, has to be thrown in the back of her van. She has coughing fits on a regular basis. She appears to be wearing sometimes a corrective lens that's for potentially seizure problems. I would think there would be a legitimate question at that point to say, hey, maybe this person isn't the healthiest. Maybe when someone hits 70 or thereabouts, stuff that would normally be considered fairly mild, like if someone who's 50, they have a couple coughing fits, you say, oh, they might have a little cold or something. They get a scratchy throat, they don't produce enough saliva, they have some genetic condition. When someone who is 70 has these problems, it becomes, in my mind, a legitimate question, and it predates by far any of these communiques involving Corsi. It predates any mention of these things via WikiLeaks, and by the way, why is it that so many people on the left are so delusional that they think that Assange equals Putin, WikiLeaks equals Russia, Roger Stone equals, Russian confidant or something? They'd have no evidence of any of these things. They still don't even have proof. To this day, years later, I still have not been given any evidence that there was actually a hack on the DNC's emails in the first place. I have no specific reason to believe other than the DNC saying so, and the FBI sort of alluding to it and speculating about it. I have no particular evidence that it wasn't an inside job to begin with. What I think happened, in all honesty, and they'll call this a conspiracy theory, oddly enough, while pretending that Roger Stone is Vladimir Putin. You look at the sort of weird shit that they say, it's like the most elaborate conspiracy theory you can think of. It's, by the way, that term is used to be dismissive. I'm looking at the situation, I'm not being given any evidence that it's not someone on the inside. I've always felt that it was probably some progressive Bernie fan staffer who's like, well, they were looking through the emails, they happened to see one that tripped their trigger, and they're like, oh, shit. Oh, yeah, the Clinton campaign is basically being coronated here. It's a little bit of a problem. And then they decided to dump this stuff with WikiLeaks. Now, of course, it became a useful scapegoat because every time you mention this, people assume you're talking about Seth Rich. Oh, conspiracy theory. No, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just some other staffer. You don't even necessarily know who it is. But that's what I think. I have no evidence otherwise. It makes more sense than my Russian hacker story. That only makes sense in the context of a bunch of bullshit that's been spun around by the Lamestream media in a sort of weird and sometimes self-contradicting web of different tales. For several years they've been doing this. In the wake of the election, they just couldn't stand the fact that Trump had won, I guess. They wanted to kneecap his presidency, prevent him from having a mandate by having this cloud over his head about Russia. Trump is sitting there now openly antagonizing them. He wouldn't be doing that, I think, if he thought he was going to get indicted. I can't wait for the Mueller probe results to be out. It's going to be funny when Roger Stone's not in prison either, and I don't think that he will be. Which means that the highest they can go is Manafort, and they tried, yesterday to tie him into WikiLeaks to do the Russia thing, and it fell flat because the story was fake. WikiLeaks comes out and says, we don't even know what you're talking about. Manafort never met with Julian Assange. Assange's legal team says, no, he never met with us. Fucking prove it. Then The Guardian has to go and redact large portions of its own story, falling short, by the way, of retraction and apology, which really should be what the legacy media does. It looks like that was fake news. It also looks like a bad faith attempt to try to tie up some loose ends before Mueller releases his shit so that at least people on the far left will believe that there's Russian collusion. That's honestly, it does look like some sort of deep state bullshit. As far as Hillary Clinton, though, goes, her health has always been, I think, a legitimate question. Trying to tie it in, well, WikiLeaks. Jerome Corsi. Roger Stone is the progenitor of Clinton's cough. No, Clinton had a cough on her own. She has health issues, obviously. She's collapsed numerous times. That wasn't the first time on 9/11. There was another incident a couple of years before that, and they came out and admitted it at the time. She had a fall. She bonked herself on the head at the time, causing probably the corrective lenses she needs to wear. She's supposedly somewhat of an alcoholic at times. Although, don't be a hypocrite, I suppose, on that one. Many of us are. But, come on. She's an older lady. If she's having coughing fits on a regular basis, that is a legitimate question. It didn't start with WikiLeaks. That's about all. Peace out.